Nice. So today we're going to continue working on the speaking section, and we will be doing what we were supposed to do on Friday when we didn't have class, or I think it was Wednesday, right? That we didn't have class. But we're going to have a practice session that we were supposed to have on Wednesday. Yeah. And basically what we're going to do now is practice the last two questions that we saw last week, which were question 2 and question 3 of the speaking section. And we're going to be practicing them all together. That means that we'll do question 2 and then we'll do another question. Okay, guys? Does anyone remember how many questions we have in the speaking section?
Four.
Exactly, 4 questions. And we have seen 3 so far, right? This week we're gonna finish with the 4th one, don't worry, but so far we have covered 3 out of the 4 questions. We have seen the first question, the independent question, and we've had a lot of practice for that question specifically. Or, yes, right, I'm correct. Have we already seen the first question? We have.
Yes.
We have, right? We have. So we have seen the first question and we had a lot of practice. We had 1 week for the first question. Then we did the second question and then we did the third question, which was the last one that we did. And now today we're going to practice the second and the third questions all together. As I was telling you, you guys are going to be answering one of each, please. Okay, guys? So do you have any questions before we start today's session? Everything clear so far? Any questions? Okay, guys, awesome. Then let's start. Okay, guys. So this will be the first one that we're going to do. Although, I don't know if we did it. Okay, guys, let's start with this one then. So remember that for this task, you first have to read the letter for 45 seconds. Then after you read, we will have to listen to a conversation between 2 students. And then you will be answering the question. Okay, guys, so you have 45 seconds now to read this text.
The college is making a mistake with this new plan.
What do you mean?
I think it'll really help accomplish the college's goals.
Don't be so sure. All that construction for 2 years, it's going to create a lot of noise.
Well, you mean in the beginning, for students still living in the dorms?
Yeah, students who are trying to sleep or do work are constantly going to be disturbed. So people will try to get as far away as possible, probably by moving off campus. So they'll lose even more people.
Huh, I hadn't thought of that. But still, once all the construction's over, more people will probably want to live in the dorms, right? I mean, the living conditions will be so much better.
If they can afford to. Do you know how the college is planning on paying for this plan? By raising the cost of campus housing.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, so if it's more expensive, why would people want to move back into the dorms if they can rent an apartment for less money?
Okay. Now the woman expresses her opinion about the university's plan, state her opinion, and explain the reasons she gives for holding that opinion. Now you guys will have 30 seconds to prepare your responses. Okay. So perhaps we can start today with Guadalupe. Although I think that you sent a text, right? Okay. Okay, don't worry, Guadalupe. It's fine if you can turn your microphone off on for today. Don't worry, maybe Natalia?
Okay.
Okay, Natalia, you may go ahead, please.
Okay. The student in the conversation is against the idea of renovating the housing of the university. First of all, she explains that the construction is going to make a lot of noise, so they can't study and live there. It's going to be it's not going to be comfortable for the students. She thinks that the students they are going to go far away as possible. And in addition, she thinks that it's going to be more expensive after the construction. So that is going to cause that the students are going to move in off campus, and they will rent apartments for less money.
Okay, Natalia, great, well done. So content was really good. I mean, you had the ideas like really well explained in terms of the noise and the cost, the price. Your grammar was good because you were talking about future, using the future tenses. And the way that you manage your time as well, I would say it was a great response, Natalia. I don't think I would change anything. Well done. It was a good response. Guys, so let's do another question too for someone else. Okay, here. So it will be the same idea, please. You guys will now have 45 seconds to read the text.
Now listen to two students discussing the letter.
Did you see this letter, Jim?
Yeah.
Be kind of nice to be able to do that, huh?
No, actually, I don't think it's a good idea.
Why not?
Well, like the part about how it'll help students concentrate. I mean, maybe a little snack will help the person who's eating it, but the trouble is that it makes it hard for everyone else to concentrate because they have to listen to someone munching on chips or biting into an apple or crinkling paper wrappers.
I guess it can be kind of disruptive.
Yeah, it would interfere with everyone's concentration. You wouldn't be able to pay attention with all the noises going on.
Okay, I guess I have to agree with you on that. But what about her other reason? It would be nice to be able to have some fun at the end of the semester, right?
No, there's a problem with that too.
Why?
Well, I don't think it's appropriate to use class time for that kind of thing. I mean, the last classes are usually pretty important. That's when we do a lot of reviewing for final exams.
True.
If we use that time for that, we probably wouldn't have time to do as much reviewing, which means we wouldn't be as well prepared for exams.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that.
Now, the man expresses his opinion about the proposal in the newspaper, briefly summarizes the proposal, then states his opinion and explains the reasons he gives for holding that opinion. Now you guys will have 30 seconds to prepare your responses. Okay. So maybe Jimena, please.
Okay.
Okay. Go ahead, please.
Okay. According to the passage about the proposal in the newspaper, in the lecture, the student gives the example of the not be able to concentrate because there are many problems with the people, the students eating chips or apples. And also he explains that well, was
Okay, Jimena, not bad. You started really well. You had the correct idea and you explained it well, Careful with the grammar part. The future tense of there is, there are, there will, well, in this case, you said will be able to concentrate without the subject, right? So students will be able to concentrate. I think it will be the negative form. Students will not be able to concentrate in any case. Remember that it's always going to be the opposite of whatever you had in the reading. So you're saying that, well, in the reading, they say that students could concentrate better if they allow eating in class. So the student says the exact opposite. The student says that they won't be able to concentrate better if they allow eating in class. And as you explained, right, because of the noise of the chips and the opening of packages, stuff like that. And the second reason, do you remember what it was, Camila? It has to be related to this, right? In the reading, they say that if they allow eating in class, then it will be possible for students to have parties in the last day of semester, the last day of class. So what does the student say about these parties? Do you remember the second reason, Jimena?
Yes, the second reason was fun. The fun for the end the semester.
It has to be the opposite of this, right? It has to be something that counterclaims this opinion. So what the student says is that they shouldn't have in-class parties the last day of semesters because they need to use that time to prepare for their exams. Right? So they should not have these parties. That's what the student says. But it wasn't bad. It's just that you practice your listening, although I think that you are improving in the way of in your delivery in itself, and the grammar is also not bad. Just practice comprehension, practice listening to different types of content. Okay, guys? So do you have any questions so far? And let's do now question 3 of the speaking section. Remember, for this task, the format is the same. You have to read a text for 45 seconds, which is about an academic concept. You need to understand what the concept is, and then you will be listening to real-world examples in the lecture. Then you need to summarize or explain the concept using the examples. So in this case, we're going to be doing this one here. Please, starting now, you guys have 45 seconds to read the text.
Now listen to part of a lecture on this topic in a psychology class.
Let's take an everyday example, an ordinary round plate like you'd find in a kitchen. If you hold the plate directly in front of your face and look at it, what shape do you see? A perfect circle, right? Suppose you tilt the plate to a different angle, to a horizontal position, like you're planning to put food on it. Still a perfect circle? No. The circle is now stretched out, flattened into an oval. Do you conclude the plate has actually changed shape, or that it's a different object, not the same plate? Of course not. It looks different, but we perceive it as still being the same. Here's a different example. This classroom we're in, it's fairly large, right? Now, from up close, from the front row, I appear to be relatively big. Bigger than if you were in the last row, right? But let's say you're sitting in the front row today, but tomorrow you're sitting in the back row. From back there, I'm going to look smaller, but you don't think I've actually gotten smaller. You don't think you're seeing a different professor, a guy who looks like me except he's smaller. No matter where you are, up close or far away, you understand without even thinking about it that I'm the same size, the same person.
Now the question says, explain what is meant by perceptual constantly using the examples provided by the professor. Now you guys have 30 seconds to prepare your responses. Okay, so Natalia, please, you may start speaking now.
According to the passage, perceptual constancy is defined as the perception that the perception of the objects depends of the external conditions like distance and angle. In the lecture, the professor gives the example of a plate in a kitchen. If you look the plate face, it will be a perfect circle. But if you look the plate in another angle, it could change the shape. It would be oval. So in summary, this is a glaring example of the perceptual constancy.
Okay, good. Now you had two examples in this case. You only mentioned one about the plate, right? But we have one more about the
But I thought that it wouldn't be enough time for me.
Okay, you had 16 seconds. You could have, even if you don't explain the entire example, you can say, the professor gives a second example about how students perceive a person or perceive the professor in class, right? You're not explaining in detail, like if you're sitting in the front row, you see the professor is bigger, but if you go to the back of the classroom, then you will see the professor smaller. Without explaining the details, you could just acknowledge that the professor gives a second example and maybe briefly mention what it's about. Okay? Or maybe reinforce what you had in the concept. You could say, the professor gives a second example about how students perceive or see the professor from different angles or from different positions in the classroom, but are still able to recognize that the professor remains the same.
Okay. Miss, I have a question. So in the TOEFL, the reading is in our, está en la pantalla. Se me olvidó la palabra.
No, it's not on your screen. You read for 40 seconds, then it goes away. You listen to the lecture with just a picture on your screen, and then you get the question. But it's just going to be 45 seconds.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sure. And in this case, even though it was close, I would say be careful when looking for the definition. That is very important, probably one of the most important parts. So look for some keywords. For example, what is known as, is called, is defined. Those words let you know kind of where the definition is. So it says, this is what is known as perceptual constancy. So what is this? Basically, it's the ability to recognize objects despite how we see from different angles. Right? They say, in spite of this, even as conditions change and we see objects differently, we still recognize that they remain the same. So basically, perceptual constancy is the ability of recognizing objects, even if we see them differently, right? Under different conditions. So in your example, you could emphasize that part. You explained the example of the plate very well. So if we see a plate from different angles, we see it in different shapes, right? If we see it on the front, then we know it's a circle. But if we see it maybe, and if it's a little upside down or we see it from a different angle, we can see it as an oval. But even if we see it differently from different angles in different positions, we can still recognize the object. We can still recognize that it's the same object, right? That it's a plate. So emphasize on this and what is connected to the definition.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, good. Another one. Okay. So it will be the same for this one, 45 seconds to read the text, please.
Now listen to part of a lecture on this topic in a film class.
The other day I went to this great new movie, and one of the scenes in particular I thought was really set up nicely. At the start of the scene, before the action and talking and things started, you saw on the movie screen an image of a city. You could tell it was a big city. There were lots of buildings, tall ones, skyscrapers. And the cars and signs on the city streets looked old-fashioned, like they were from the past, like the 1940s. The other thing I noticed right away from this first image, just when the scene started, was that the city seemed gloomy. You couldn't see much because it was, well, there was mostly darkness rather than sunlight, and there was only just a little bit of light from the street lamps. On top of that, it was raining and kind of foggy. All of these details worked together to create a dark, gloomy, mysterious feeling. So then, when the action started and it showed detectives talking to each other in an office, I already knew that the office was located in a tall building in a big city sometime in the 1940s. And I had a good idea that the events that would be taking place would be pretty dark and mysterious because of the shot, the image I saw at the beginning of the scene.
Okay. Now, using the professor's example, explain what an establishing shot is and how it's used. And now you guys will have 30 seconds to prepare your responses. Okay. So, Jimena, please. You can start speaking now.
Okay. According to the passage, the establishing shot is defined as background info and full rest of the scenario. In the lecture, the professor gives the example of that he saw a big bust, and right away he noticed the darkness, the gloomy films, and he explains that there started the top buildings in 1940s.
Okay, Jimena, okay, good. Yes, but first of all, careful with the definition. Are you sure that you have the correct definition? What is the establishing shot?
Is to communicate background information to the viewer.
Establishing shot is basically an image shown briefly at the beginning of a scene that is used to provide context for the rest of the scene, right? So it says here, an establishing shot is, so that is the definition. An establishing shot is a picture, an image that is shown briefly in the beginning of a scene that gives context for the rest of the scene, right? So it says it communicates background information about the setting, where the rest of the scene will occur, the mood of the scene and stuff. But the important thing is that it's an image shown in the beginning of a scene that gives context about the scene. So based on that, you have to pay attention and try to understand better the example. In this case, the professor talks about a movie that he saw, and he explains that the first scene that he saw, the first image that he saw was what you described, right? It was a very gloomy scene. It was dark. So that provided him context for the rest of the movie. So he knew where the movie was set. It was set in the past, in the 1940s. The mood of the movie was a mysterious movie. So this image that he saw provided him context about the movie, right? So careful here. You need to be able to catch the correct definition so that you can understand better the example as well. Okay. Do you guys have any questions so far? Okay, let's do another one. Okay, guys, let's do this one here. So it will be the same. You guys have 45 seconds now to read the text.
Now listen to two students discussing the announcement.
They're making a mistake.
What do you mean?
Look, they're trying to do away with distractions so we can study better. But with this change, we won't have anywhere in the library to get together to work on group projects.
True. Group project work is common these days.
So instead of buying these new units, they should use the money to build meeting rooms, and that would reduce any noise in the main library areas.
Yeah, that's what we could really use. There's just not as much need to work in isolation.
Exactly. And the other thing is, what's this about overcrowding? Well, sure, we have more students enrolled at the university this year, but do we really have a problem with overcrowding?
I don't think so. I always get a whole table to myself.
Right. I see empty tables there all the time. It'll just be a waste of money to replace what we have, since what we have now is sufficient for the amount of students that use the library.
Okay. The man expresses his opinion about the upcoming change, state his opinion, and explain the reasons he gives for holding that opinion. And you will now have 30 seconds to prepare your response. Okay. So, Natalia, please, you can start speaking now.
The student in the conversation is against the idea of constructing one-person desk and closed in the library. First of all, he explains that they couldn't study in group, or they couldn't make group projects. Instead of that, he thinks that he would buy new books or something for the library instead of construction more closed desk. And also he thinks that it's a waste of money because he thinks they have what they have in the library is enough for the usage of the library.
Okay. I don't know about the second one, but yes, I mean, the ideas are mostly correct. The second one was that there is no a problem of overcrowding, right? So there are always enough tables in the library, so they don't need to create more, or they don't need to have more spaces in the library. Okay, but it wasn't bad. One tip, try not to use couldn't when talking about the future. Couldn't is mostly used for talking about the abilities in the past. So if you want to say that if they do this in the future, they won't be able instead of couldn't. So they won't be able to meet for group projects. They won't be able to do group projects in the libraries. Okay, instead of they couldn't, they won't be able. And careful with the same with the content in general, right? Remember to always pay attention to the reasons given here because they will be related. So in the reading, they say that this is because these new cubicles will enable the library to accommodate the recent increase in the number of students. Because there are many new students, they say. But the student in the conversation says that there's no need to increase the number of tables in the library because there's always empty spaces in the library. So make sure that you always identify the two reasons here because that will help you identify the students later in the conversation.
Okay, Miss. I have trouble taking notes while I'm reading. So I was taking notes, but sometimes I don't understand my notes.
Okay, yes, it happens. But when you're reading, you say, or when you're listening?
When I'm reading. So I'm reading and taking notes without seeing what I'm writing. So I don't understand.
But suggestion will then be read first until you find the change, right? So you read, you find the change. Let's say in this one. I don't know. Okay, so say goodbye to the big, don't take any notes. So the big multi-person study tables in the library. This summer, the tables will be exchanged for new personal study cubicles. That is already the change, right? So you read that. Once that you see the change and you understand, you read again. The tables in the library will be exchanged, will be switched to personal study cubicles, small one-person desks enclosed by walls. So you read until there, you find the change, you understand it, and then you write down a few notes. So tables, exchange, study cubicles. And then you don't take any more notes, and then you just focus on understanding what they say next, the two reasons. You don't need to take notes about the reasons. They are just so that you can later understand better the reasons from a student perspective. Okay, try to do that, but don't read and take notes at the same time, like multi-person and writing it down, because that way you will not understand as much as you can.
Okay, thank you.
So let's do this one here now. Please, you can start reading the text now.
Now listen to two students discussing the article.
Did you see this announcement in the newspaper? It sounds like a great idea.
You really think so? Not many people even use the place.
I know, that's the point. People don't go there because the facilities are old and the exercise equipment breaks down. I think the director's right that they get more use out of it this way. Right now, the place is usually empty, and that's too bad. Students can get pretty stressed out if they don't get some exercise.
That's a good point. But doesn't it seem like a lot of money?
It's not really all that much. If you figure a lot of people spend that kind of money on a CD or when they go out to the movies, this is just one charge for the whole year.
That's true. And instead of some little thing, we get a recreation center people might actually use.
Right. So considering the benefits, it's really not that much to pay.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
Now the man expresses his opinion about the university's plan, state his opinion, and explain the reasons he gives for holding that opinion. Now you will have 30 seconds to prepare your responses. Okay. So Jimena, please, you can start speaking now.
Okay. According to the passage, fee increase for recreation center use is defined as increase $25 and use the campus recreation center. In the lecture, the man gives the example of is a great idea because a lot of students spend a lot of money in other things, and considering all these things is a lot benefit for the students.
Okay. Maybe it's greatly beneficial or it's very beneficial for students. Okay, nice, but you got confused. You were using the template for the third question, and this is the second, right? Don't forget. The one that is about the university, that is the second question, and you were using the template for the first. So careful. Remember that in this template, you have to first state the student's opinion. So the student supports the idea of, and then you need to explain the idea using the verb, right? Of increasing the fee for the recreation center. And then the way you explained this, the content was really good, Jimena, because, well, you did have the correct change, and your first reason was good. The students spend the same or more money on recreation in their way, right? On buying CDs, going to concerts. So this is not a high fee. That was a good reason. That was exactly what the student says. And the other reason that the student gives is that students need to use the recreation center because they are usually stressed out due to exams and stuff. So they need to have this recreation center very well equipped. So careful with the template. So mostly what I would say. But it wasn't bad, just careful with the template. I think your understanding was better in this case.
Thank you.
Yes, of course. Now it says, let's do question 3. So we're going to do the same. Right now you have 45 seconds to read the text.
Listen to part of a lecture in a psychology class.
Now, a study was done that illustrated this phenomenon. In the study, people were given an ordinary task that everyone has probably done before. They were simply asked to peel potatoes, and to peel as many potatoes as possible in a given amount of time. Okay, so some people worked alone, and they were told that the number of potatoes they each peeled would be recorded. Others peeled potatoes together as part of a group, and they were told that only the total number of potatoes peeled would be recorded. So it would be impossible to tell how many any one person had done. Then researchers compared the results of the people who worked alone and those that worked together to see if there was any difference. That is, they took the average score of the people working alone and compared it to the average score of the people working together in a group. And they did discover a difference. It turns out that people working as a group peeled significantly fewer potatoes than people who worked alone.
Right. Using the example from the lecture, explain what social loafing is and how it affects behavior. Now you guys will have 30 seconds to prepare your responses. Okay. So, Natalia, please, you may go ahead now.
According to the passage, social loafing, it occurs when you work in a group, you don't work hard enough than working alone. In the example, the professor gives the example of, in the lecture, the professor gives the example of peeling potatoes. They made an experiment that the people that work alone have more that people that work alone peel more potatoes than the people that work in group. When you work in a group, the professor say that you can't know how many potatoes peeled any person. So he thinks that that it's better when you work alone.
Okay. Does he say that he thinks that it's better when you work alone? Don't make assumptions, right? Because he doesn't give his opinion. He's pretty much objective. He's just explaining this. But yes, you had the correct definition. Social loafing is this decrease in personal effort, right? The decrease in personal effort, especially in a simple group task, is known as social loafing. So when the decrease in personal effort when you're working in groups. focus on this. When you're explaining, the way you explained the experiment was actually good. You gave some context. So there were two groups of people that were asked to peel potatoes. One group was told that the number of potatoes peeled individually was going to be recorded, and the other group was only told that the number of potatoes peeled as a group will be recorded. And the group that peeled potatoes individually, so the group that was told that they were going to record the number of potatoes peeled by each one of them, peeled more potatoes in total, right? Why? That is the important thing of why. Why was this the result? Because the group of people that were told that only the total number of potatoes peeled by the entire group will be recorded, every member of that group didn't put that much effort, right? Not like, because they knew that they weren't recording how many potatoes each one of them peeled. They were just recording the total number. So there was a decrease in personal effort on a simple group task. Right, make sure that you always try to connect these ideas. I think you were just missing some extra time to make that connection. So I would probably try to summarize things a little bit more. Don't give too many details and hurry up in your introduction so that you have more time to explain the example better. Okay?
Okay, thanks.
Okay, good. So what do you guys think now that we practice questions 2 and 3 all together? Do you have any questions today? It's going to be our last practice for questions 2 and 3. And tomorrow we'll start question 4 of the speaking section, the last one. So what would you guys say? Do you have any questions? Do you have any comments before we go?
I think task 3 is more complicated than task 2.
Yes, it is a little bit because you have to connect the ideas to match. It's about classifying the information really well. Task 2 is just summarizing. So there's not much to do, just summarize. But yes, in this case, you actually have to explain the concept with the example. So in a way, yeah, I would say that it's a little bit more complicated. But as everything is just a matter of practice. And I think you guys are doing a good job. You are showing progress. Just managing your time maybe a little bit more, some grammar reviewing, but mostly practicing. Yes. Any other question? Anything else?
I would. My question is: this third task is have more score compared with the other two.
Okay, no. All of them, the 4 of them are worth exactly the same. The 4 of them are exactly the same.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Any other questions?
No.
Hey guys? Well, in that case, please don't forget to fill out today's survey. It should be on your screens. Okay, guys, thank you so much. And I will be seeing you guys tomorrow in class.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye, guys.